There are no silver bullets that are going to make your close rates go through the roof to help you make more money. However, there's 1,000 golden BBs that absolutely will make you more money as a real estate agent. And in this video, I'm going to share with you 13 of those golden BBs that I use in my personal production to close over $1.1 million in just my first 2 years in production. Then I got completely out of sales so that I could grow my team, which has done over $600 million just in our first 5 years in the business. And these are the tactics that we use to convert at a very, very high level. So let's go ahead and dive in. I have 13 principles that I'm going to walk through. I've got my iPad here, so I'm going to share and walk through each one of these. Now, the very first one is speed to lead. This is something that most salespeople wildly underestimate the importance of. And I want to make sure, I'm going to use Uber. I think we all understand Uber for the first two things. So the first one is speed to lead. So let me ask you a question: is if you were to go and need a ride to the airport, or maybe you're in the city or whatever and you need to get an Uber, and you open up the app, how long are you going to wait for an Uber to be available? Are you going to wait 1 minute, 2 to 5 minutes, 15 minutes? I'd venture to say that after about 1 to 2 minutes, you would be switching apps from Uber over to Lyft, I think that's how you spell Lyft, within 3 minutes of not being able to find an Uber. So what do you think your consumers are going to do when they go onto your website and they request a tour or they request a home value? When they know, and we know, that they could just go to the website that everybody goes to for both of those things. And when agents bash on Zillow, they stole all of our leads. I guarantee you that 80% of real estate agents, if I went to your website right now, I dropped my information and said, hey, I want to talk to you about buying or selling real estate, I guarantee it would take you, let me delete all of this. It would probably take hours, not minutes. And that one is this is a huge problem for you in your sales. But here's the goal. Here's where we want to get to. Is you want to respond in seconds. If you can literally respond within 5 seconds, you are way ahead of the game. But the minimum requirement is 5 minutes. And then even better than that, really, it's like 2 minutes. And I want you to go through and do an exercise right now. Go on Facebook, go on Instagram, and start scrolling, and then hit an ad. And if it's my ad, please skip through it. But if it's somebody else's ad, just click on it and then inquire and see how long it takes for something to happen. But I would literally start a timer for 5 minutes. Inquire for something and wait for 5 minutes and just see and feel how long that is. I would venture to say you aren't even able to stand on the page for 5 minutes because that's how short our attention span is. So your speed to lead does several different things, but the first thing is you grab them while they're actually interested. Now, people might think, Christian, is it weird if I reach out to somebody immediately after they inquire? No, they inquired. Most people are going to be impressed to some degree, and the reality is most people don't respond anyway. So you're going to get more responses when you do this. That is the whole entire goal, is you're going to have more opportunities to get into conversations. Now, there's not a whole lot of things to talk about with speed to lead other than it needs to be fast. If you are hours or, God forbid, days responding to people later down the road, they've already moved on. Let me give a really, really good example here. I sold a $1.25 million home in a neighborhood that I would love to do a lot of business in. And when we got this listing signed, I asked how she found out about us. And she'd been on our email list, right? Our email list for 3 years. So she'd been receiving valuable content for us for 3 years. And when she said, I was like, oh, so that's why you reached out. When she was like, yeah, well, I actually called the number one guy, but he never got back to me. So I called you instead because you've been sending me valuable emails. So this guy lost, you can do the math, $50K because you didn't answer the phone. or because he didn't respond back. So speed to lead, you tell me, how important is it for you to be fast to your leads or to actually respond? Here's another thing that drives me absolutely insane with salespeople is if you are one of the people that has 35,000 emails unread, I guarantee you have missed a deal. Guaranteed. And if you're one of the psychopaths that has text messages, is even worse. And if you're not using a CRM, God bless you. I don't know how you do it, and you shouldn't. But if you're using your iPhone to be your CRM, you are missing so many deals. It's unbelievable. You have no idea how many you are. This isn't necessarily a speed to lead thing, but I guess it is because you have a deal in that 35,000 emails or the 100 unread text messages that you just didn't respond to because you didn't even know you had it. So your speed to lead is non-existent. So that's number one, speed to lead. This is stealing a quote from, not a quote, I'm going to paraphrase this. Alex Hormozi quoted some other study. I'm not going to take the time to go through the sources, but it was like there's a 390% increase in close rate when you get to somebody in less than, I think it was 2 minutes. Let's just say 5 minutes to be safe. That is massive. There's nothing that's going to make that big of a difference anywhere. So I hope that drives the point home for close rate. That is number one. Number two, I'm also going to use Uber as an example here, but this is for maximize availability. So there's a few different things here. Here's kind of your like, let's say talk times. These are prime times based on a lot of people's research and then like us actually just doing this all the time is from 8 a.m. to noon is your morning kind of time block, right? This morning block is really important. From noon to 4, I tell our team, this is my advice, is to work on the business. Right? So here I say prospecting in the morning. And then the best time is from 4 to 7 p.m. This is for your follow-up with clients. Right? So prospecting is for new business. Follow up with your clients is for existing business, setting appointments with people you already know what is going on. So this is one way for availability. The other thing is you want to make yourself literally more available. So if you looked at a calendar, for example, and if you were trying to book my calendar to talk to me, and I only had 2 time slots available, one is today and one's for next Thursday, that makes me more difficult to talk to than you. And I'll take it out of even sales, for example. We use a calendar for our recruiting to our team. And my calendar was getting so full with just stuff that I said, okay, we're missing out on setting appointments because I'm not super available. So what we did was we added on a second person to the calendar, added in all of the time slots literally at every single 5 minutes of the day that there were time slots available. And go figure, we set 10x more appointments. Now, if you're saying, I guess that doesn't matter, 10x more appointments. And if you have an assistant or if you're running a team, like, again, do I think I can close better than my office administrator is taking these calls? Yeah, of course. Can I convert 10 times better than him? Probably not. So this is a huge lift on the business, literally just by being more available. Now, I will say there's a double-edged sword here. So what I do not want you to do, here's a con. The pro, let's do pros real quick. No, I'm going to say the pros in a second. So the con is you have to manage your schedule. Right? Meaning if you know that you need to be making phone calls from 4 to 6 p.m. in order to set up appointments for your weekend, but somebody wanted to go tour property at 5 and you're going to miss that whole time block, well, is there any way they could do it another time? And this is where you live and die by the calendar. As if it's not in the calendar, it's not going to happen. And we talk about this all the time. It's probably the single number one biggest pain point for real estate agents, in my experience, is that they have a very, very hard time managing the calendar. So you want to make sure that you are sacred over the things that you're actually doing. So the pro over here, right? So that's the con, is that you are going to have to manage your calendar. The pro over here is that you literally just make more money, which is the entire goal, right? So that's number two, is to make sure you have a better availability to allow for you to set more appointments. Now, number three is a really exciting one. I love this one. This is question-based selling. This is something I learned this through when I learned sales. This is something I have always personally done. I've never really sold any other way than question-based selling. And I really learned it when I got into the real estate business. I kind of did this and bleeds into number four a little bit before I got into real estate. But once I got into real estate, this made a huge, huge difference. It's question-based selling. So the idea is whoever is asking is in charge. Whoever's asking the questions. So for example, if you get on the phone and the customer's asking, hey, what do you do for me? What do you charge? What do you whatever? You are absolutely not in control of that conversation whatsoever. So when I talk about question-based selling, so whoever is asking the questions is in charge of the conversations itself. If you are answering questions, you are on the defensive as a salesperson. So what you want to do is you want to have a whole bunch of questions in your back pocket that allow you to get information out of the customer. Now, one thing that I love doing is I say like these high leverage questions. I'm just writing cues where you're going to get one. You ask one question and you might get 5 answers, because I can ask one question that has an open-ended question that gives me way more opportunity to get more information. So I can ask questions like, what are you looking to change about your current living situation? Or what has you thinking about making the move in the first place? What was it about this home that had you thinking about making a move? One of my favorite all-time questions is if I'm in a property tour with somebody and I say, hey, how does this house look in comparison to everything else you've seen? And when you ask that question, they can say, well, it looks okay. And that would give you the exact information if I said, hey, how does this house look? But when you add in, how does this house look in comparison to everything else you've seen, they can answer anywhere. And think of this on a sales timeline where this person's in research mode and not super serious. And this person's like wanting to buy a home and write offers. So they could say like, oh, it's okay. And it has this house look in comparison to everything else you've seen. They might be like, this is my first house. I actually just stumbled into an open house. This is the very first one we've ever looked at. And that tells you something. Or they could tell you, well, it's not as good as the last one. And then you might ask another, question-based selling. You might ask another question and says, oh, well, what was it about the last one that you liked better than this one? It's like, well, it had this, that, and the other. And we wrote an offer on it because we liked it. That is wildly different than the other person giving the opposite answer. So it can give you way more information. Now, even in there, if this person tells you that they were writing offers last weekend and they didn't get accepted, that's telling you that they either have an agent or they're working with a listing agent. They're writing offers. They're probably already pre-approved. And you need to go like right into talk about earning the business. Like you need to go right into high value to close that deal, right? So little hinges swing big doors. This is a very high leverage activity, is getting very, very good at asking questions so that you stay in charge of the conversation. I have an entire training, the closer framework, all of clarifying looks like what we just talked about. So that's number 3. The next thing, and this will help you with your question-based selling, is what this was Phil Jones. This is childlike curiosity. This is number 4. Now, what this looks and tactically sounds like are very simple. It's childlike curiosity is when you're asking questions, you want to genuinely be interested in what they have to say. Now, when I do this and you guys hear my normal tone when I'm making content for you, a real estate agent, you're getting my real, this is real Christian. But if I'm a consumer, if I'm talking to a consumer and I'm saying, "So, what was it about this house that has you thinking about making a move?" I'm going up on my pitch, I'm tilting my head off, and I'm kind of squinting because I'm trying to figure out, because I'm curious. This is the major point here, is curiosity. And when I say childlike, this is to give you a visualization of what, like when a child is asking questions, there's no motive behind it. They're just, so, mom or dad, why is this that way? Why is the sky blue? Why is the water blue? Why is the sun yellow? Why do the birds fly and the dogs bark? They're just curious. And you want to be that way with your consumers as well too. Now, the most important thing here is you want to be, I say it this way. You want to be adding tools to your belt. And you are not just asking questions for the sake of the conversation. This was a fantastic question that I had one of my agents ask me a few weeks ago in a training where we were talking about clarifying why somebody's thinking about making a move. And she asked the question, which I thought was fantastic, was, "Christian, are we just trying to extend the conversation?" And the answer is yes, but it's not just for the sake of extending the conversation. Obviously, the longer you're in a conversation, the more likely you are to actually convert the lead. That's obvious. However, not necessarily 100% true. You could talk to somebody for 2 hours and get nowhere and never convert that person. But you could also have a 5-minute conversation and get all the information you need and be able to provide value for them and set crystal clear next steps and then move on in the sale. So what I say is putting tools in your belt. So this is where we ask clarifying questions. And all of their answers are tools. So for example, if we just met at an open house and I said, "So, hey, what had you out looking at open houses this weekend?" See, curiosity, head tilted to the side. And you might be like, "Oh, we were just kind of in the area and we thought we'd stop by." Like, "Oh, cool. Are you a neighbor?" And you're going to start going from there. If they're like, "Oh, yeah, we live right down the street." "Oh, awesome. How do you like the neighborhood? How long have you been there?" Blah, blah, blah. You're asking all of these questions. So now then, one of the tools is that they're a neighbor. How do you like the neighborhood? "Well, we hate it," right? Then they hate the neighborhood. And okay, well, what has you thinking about making a move in the first place? It's like, "Well, we hate the neighborhood. We've been here for 2 years. We need to upgrade, right, to a bigger." Oh my gosh, I just spelled upgrade wrong. Right, we need to upgrade to another size. Right, we need another bedroom. We got a kid on the way. All of these different things, you're putting tools in your belt for later down the road. So this is what childlike curiosity and question-based selling go in common together. Now, all of this boils up to number 5, which is what I call a consultative sales approach. Now, why I call this consultative is, especially in this industry, so many real estate agents are only selling relationship. And if it's not a past client, if it's not a friend or family member, they are screwed because they just don't have a real sales approach. They're just doing deals only with the people that know and like and trust them. They're not building know, like, and trust in the sale. And if you are not able to do that, you're going to lose out on tons and tons and tons of money and opportunities. So this consultative sales approach, the goal is to help, let's say your client, let's say your lead that you just met is here at point A. And your goal is to lead them down the path that makes the most sense for them to help them come to the conclusion that here at Z, where they now have a new house, if that makes sense, or they move or whatever, that you are going to help kind of guide them through the way to make their life easier. Now, if it makes sense, and this is if it actually leads into a sale, because sometimes it leads out over here and maybe they're renting, or maybe they stay in their current home, whatever it is. But your consultative sales approach is going to help them make the best decisions to get where they need to be. And this is where a lot of real estate agents are so focused on the end result versus I'm just working on from A to B, from B to C, from C to D, from D to E, and so on all the way through the rest of the process. This is a consultative sales approach. Another way that I explain this is, what are the things that have to happen in order for the deal to close? Well, you have to generate a lead, and then from there, you need to have a convo. That's a V. You need to have a convo, and then from the conversation, you're going to have to set some sort of an appointment. From the appointment, you're going to need to do some sort of a consult, and this is buyer or seller, same idea. From the consultation, you're going to need an agreement. From the agreement, you're either going to go list or write offers, right? And then from there, you need to go into escrow, and then you need to close. Like, all of these things have to happen, and then if they're a buyer getting a loan, they need to get approval. Right? That's kind of this would happen in this general vicinity in here. So these things have to happen in order for a sale to happen. So if this is how I did this myself. Every lead I had, I would mentally, and I would have this in my notes in my CRM, I would say, okay, I'm right here with John and Sally. I have done a consultation. The next logical thing is that they need to sign an agreement in order for us to be moving forward, right? We need to go to this thing next. So it makes your follow-up easier. It makes the expectations easier. It makes all of those things easier. But this is where the consultative sales approach, I'm not just trying to say, hey, you need to buy a house, you need to buy a house, you need to do whatever. Be like, hey, this would be the next step in the process, and we're coaching them through what happens next. And we do this through an education process for the most part. Now, this leads right into number 6, which is free value appointment. This is something, especially with the changes in how the NAR changes, right? This is something that's relatively new, and this is where there's always been this divide from sellers and how you handle sellers versus how you handle buyers. Now, here's what's always been normal is if a seller calls you, even if it was your friend or family member, you would set a listing appointment. That would be pretty much the first thing you would do. And what you might do is, if you were to do anything before that, what it would be is and I'll put like 0 here, and this would be like a walkthrough before you actually talk about selling the home, where this might be more strategy and this might be more presentation. It totally depends how you do this. You get the point. Now, on the buyer side, there's a lot of people that are just going to agreement. And I think this is incredibly stupid. This would be like, and then over here would be, you would have listing agreement. Now imagine if your friend, family member called me and said, hey Christian, we want to list your house. Do you think I would skip right to, yeah, let me send you a listing agreement, my fees, whatever %? Not in a million years. That would be the most ridiculous. It would be worse for a friend or family member that would be a stranger. I would never just be like, oh yeah, cool, I'll send you over the paperwork and I'll bring my sign tomorrow. Like, crazy. But people are doing this all the time on the buy side. So by adding a free value appointment, you are going to, you're going to meet more leads. Guaranteed. Unless you have a 100% close rate on your buyer agreement right off the bat, you are absolutely going to meet more leads. Now, this also works on the listing side. This appointment here is much easier to get than this one here. If you just want to go to somebody's house and talk about what it looks like to sell their home, they're less likely to say that than they are, well, why don't we just do a walkthrough where we can talk about strategy that if you were to sell, you have some extra information. So this walkthrough strategy is much easier for the consumer to actually agree to, and we just want to do this on the buy side as well too. So our process for the buy side that increases conversion rate like crazy is to have a free touring. And this is a no cost, no obligation touring agreement, and you can get a copy of it in our start to finish. If you want the entire thing here, the school community that we have built out, start to finish in real estate, go to onyxhomes.com/school. Inside of the sales masterclass, I have the exact document. You can literally just copy and put your logo on if you want. But this basically just says, we're showing you the property for the next 7 days. There's no cost, no obligation whatsoever. If you choose to want to work together, if you want to know what it looks like to work together moving forward, then we can talk about doing a buyer strategy session. And in this is just like our listing appointment. This is the same thing. One for buyer, one for seller. And this is why I bring this up, is so many people talk about everybody wants to be a listing agent and then nobody wants to do a presentation for their buyers. And it's like, if you're a listing agent, your presentation has to be dialed. That's the whole entire point, is you're closing on listing presentations. Just do this for buyers as well too. So then after you knock their socks off with a killer buyer strategy session, then you get the buyer agreement. And this has dramatically increased conversion ratio, CVR. This has dramatically increased our conversion ratios on all lead sources. We do not do this we do this for all lead sources across the board. So that is your free value appointment. Now the free value appointment is this walkthrough or the free touring agreement. And if you do not do a buyer strategy session, you are out of your mind. You're missing tons of money. The value here in a buyer strategy session, yes, one, you're going to meet more leads because you're doing free. 2, you are going to convert more leads because you have a better process and it's more valuable, right? Because you are doing the strategy session, which for us is about a 45-minute to an hour-and-a-half consultation with the buyer. So there is a tremendous amount of value for the consumer there, even if they don't hire us right there on the spot, which we're going to talk about that later. So you're going to meet with way more leads because you have a free option. Number 2 is you're going to convert way more people. So not only are you meeting more people over here, you're converting a higher percentage of the more. So that's like double more, which is more money. That is the entire goal of this. Now, number 3, which I don't think a lot of people talk about, is you're going to likely be able to increase your fee. Not free. You're likely to be able to increase your fee. You're going to set more appointments with more people. That's number 1. Number 2 is you are going to convert more of those people because you have a better sales process that is more valuable. And because you have a better sales process that is more valuable, you are likely going to be able to charge a higher fee. So that is more, which could dramatically increase your business. And this is something we are seeing with our agents, are getting like 30% more income, like period, from the same amount of leads. And this is like very generous, very conservative. There are some people that are getting way more than this. So that is, this one here was talking about adding a free value appointment inside of your sales process. All right, we are rocking and rolling through this. Number 7 is a high value appointment. Now, I jumped the gun here. This is what I'm talking about. This is your high value appointment. So what and for us, this is obviously our listing presentation, but it's also the buyer strategy session. And this is where we show what it looks like to work together before we ever ask for business. Where in our high value appointment on the buy side, I'm not going to go too much on a listing presentation because like everybody knows what a listing presentation is. I'm going to go through, because so many people are not doing this. We call this our buyer strategy session. You call it whatever you want. And in here, this is literally a 45+ minute consultation that breaks down. I say there's 3 major things inside of our pitch. This is how our clients are taking advantage of the market. It is how we keep you protected as a consumer. And number 3, we talk about how we get the best deal. Now, inside of this, like this is incredibly valuable. So we get to the end of this consultation and they are, thank you so much, Christian. This was so helpful with so much information. I'm so glad you recommended we do this. The very next question we ask is, is it based on everything you've heard from me so far? Is there any reason you would not want to work together? Right? So right at the end of this, we ask, is there any reason you would not want to work together? And I would say, and this is for all of our agents. Obviously, this worked for me very, very well. However, I was not selling when we had to get buyer agreements signed. And transparently, I did not do this when I was doing it, when I was selling. And this was back in 22 was when I stopped selling. So we have brand new agents that are following this exact sales process that are getting buyer agreement signed at a full fee in the first 2 weeks in the business. So if they can do it, you can absolutely do it as well too. But when you ask this question, this is what's called a trial close to make sure there's no objections that would come up. And if they say, no, Christian, we want to work with you, you're amazing, and I would say, fantastic. Well, here's what it looks like to work together. Because the reality is nowadays there's two parts of where we have to negotiate our fee. There's on the buyer agreement, and then number two is on the actual offer itself. So those are the two different times you're going to have to negotiate the fee. Now, the first time is when they're agreeing to pay you whatever the fee is. And the second time is to make sure that you actually get your offer accepted with the seller paying the entire fee, assuming that's the strategy you're going with. And that by doing this entire strategy, we make sure that our clients are more comfortable and confident with the entire process. They actually hire us, going back to these whole things, right? We're going to meet more people because of our free stuff. But then everything we just talked about here is from here down is because of the buyer strategy session on the buyer side. Just like at the end of a listing presentation, we ask, based on everything you've heard from us so far, is there any reason you would not want to list your home with us today? And if they say, yeah, there's these objections, well, then you handle it. But if they say, no, honestly, you guys are great. I was cool, close. And you go right into it. But that's what happens after you do a high value appointment. It's pretty standard on the seller side. Unfortunately, I guess fortunately for us, because it makes converting easier, it is not standard on the buy side. So you can add that in your business and make a huge impact. All right, that leads us to number 8, which is content for nurture and convert. A lot of people mess this up. I made another video about this, I think it was last week, where most people are trying to generate leads with their content. And I think that is wrong. I think we should try to convert the leads we already have and nurture the ones we already have before we try to lead generate. Lead generation is way harder than converting and nurturing. So for example, if you are watching this video and you are an agent that's in my database, you might be thinking, God, and you're a Southern California agent, you might be thinking, gosh, this is super valuable. And if you're watching this video, however many minutes into it, you might be thinking, gosh, if Christian's giving this value out for free, I wonder what kind of value is behind working for his team or working on Onyx Homes. And if you are that agent, you can go to onyxhomes.com and learn all about what it looks like to work together. And that would be me nurturing and converting a lead that I already have. You could be in my CRM, for example, and you might be getting this through an email, or you might just be following us, and you might be thinking, maybe I should join that team. Or if you've never heard of us before, you might be thinking like, gosh, what is all this content about? This is something interesting that I haven't heard before, and this is more tactical than I may be used to hearing. And if that's the case and you want way more of this, you can go to, where'd my pen go? You can go to onyxhomes.com/school with a K, just like that. And then you can go join and get a free sales masterclass that I put tons and tons of time. I can't spell. I put tons and tons of time into this, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of information in this video, but I am really scratching the surface. A lot of these things are covered way more in detail in the actual masterclass itself. So, again, it is way easier to nurture and convert leads than it is to generate new ones. And the whole goal is to make more money in the first place. And if you're converting and nurturing leads you already have, guess what you're doing? You're making more money. And if you're not making content already, which most of us probably aren't making nearly as much content as they should, then you probably aren't good at it. Like I suck at content now. I feel like I suck at it now. I was terrible at it before. And every video I make, I feel like I get better and better at it over time. And I am just starting now 3 years later to actually make content to generate leads. And this isn't one of them. I just felt like this was a great example to generate leads. But it's also harder. So that is number 7. That is number 8, is creating content to generate nurture leads. Now, Christian, what do you say? Good question. Let's stay on here on content. What content do you make? Here is step number 1 is list questions. So you are an agent, you talk to people, people have questions. You should have a running list on your phone, on your notepad, on your whatever, a running list of all the questions your consumers are having. I would have every single one of them on there and answer the questions that you get most often. The second thing that you can do is you can give case studies, which is saying, hey, I did this with my client. This was the outcome. My client took our advice. They did our strategy session. We saved them $75,000. We beat up multiple offers. Here's how we did it. That is a case study. Number 3 is you can show is greater than tell. So you can show them what it looks like to work together before you ever do it. Now, for example, we just talked about on the high value client, on this, not on this channel, on our consumer facing side, you can go right to, just to show you how much I mean this, the entire buyer strategy session is on our website for free for anybody to see. So we do this because I firmly believe in showing what it looks like to work together before we would ever ask them to do business with us. So if somebody, and you can go do this right now, this is onyxhomes.com/buy. And if you want, you can go watch a 55-minute buyer strategy session. I'll just abbreviate it for time. You can go in there and watch our 55-minute buyer strategy session, and you don't have to opt into anything. You can just literally go on the website and watch that. And somebody might go to there and watch that and think, oh, that was helpful. Cool. Now I'm going to go buy with my Aunt Sally, and that's fine, and I'll never know about it. But there are going to be way more people that watch that video and be like, gosh, if this is just on their website, I'm going to opt in because this is the person I want to work with. And those are where you get higher quality leads that pay more money, that convert easier, that all just lead to you making more sales and being a happier salesperson, which is the whole entire goal of this. So these are the 3 things. Highly recommend you do this if you have any intentions of making content whatsoever. All right. So that was number 8. Let's move on to number 9, which is handle objections. Oh my gosh, I can't spell. Handle your objections, and I mean all of them. And I'm going to give you a number 1 here as well too. This is trial close. This is one of my favorite things to implement into a sales process, is ask the question, based on everything you've heard from me so far, is there any reason you wouldn't want to work together moving forward? And if they say, no, I want to work with you, like, if they say, you get my point. If they say, yes, I want to work with you, then great, you go right in for the close. And it should be very simple. If they say anything other than yes, which would be no, maybe, whatever, you absolutely have to handle that objection. You have to find out what needs to happen, right? So this is the question I would ask. Okay, so based on everything you've heard from me so far, is there any reason you wouldn't want to work together moving forward? And it's like, well, we need to think about it. You need to find out what are we thinking about? Why? And you can handle it, and then you loop back in. So for example, if I say, based on everything you've heard from me, is there any reason you wouldn't want to work together moving forward? Well, Christian, we want to talk to a few other, this is super helpful. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And this is an objection we hear a lot. But we want to talk to a couple of other real estate agents to see what they have to say. And you might say, okay, cool, fantastic. Do you mind, here's the question. And again, question-based selling. Whoever's asking the questions is in charge. Do you mind me asking, what was it you did not hear today that you're hoping to hear from somebody else? Now, there's one of two things will happen. They will either be able to answer that question and they'll be able to say, well, Christian, we were looking for an agent that's going to be able to find us off market properties in the city we're looking for. And you handle that objection however best you can. And if you can't handle that objection and that's really what they're looking for, then they shouldn't hire you. And that's consultative sales approach. And that's, you know what? If you're only looking for off market properties, you're only looking for them in the city, I could lie to you and say that I will find that, but that's just not realistic. And if that's what you're looking for, go talk to the other agents. And if you find it, great. And if you don't and you want to come back, that's fine. Now, the reality is they're most of the time, pro tip here, most of the time they're not going to be able to tell you what the actual thing is. So based on everything you shared with me so far, do you mind me asking, is there any reason you wouldn't want to work together moving forward? And if they say, well, Christian, we need to think about it. We want to talk to a couple of other agents. And I say, okay, what are you hoping to hear from them that you didn't hear from me? And they're like, well, I don't know. I just kind of want to see what else is out there. Obviously, your presentation did not impress them to the point where they want to hire you. And then I would go in and I would say, it sounds like we might not be a good fit. And then they might be like, well, no, it's not that you're not a good fit. We just want to figure out what else is out there, right? And then you can go in and you do not move on until you handle this. And I teach this with our agents all the time, that in the sales process, unless you get a commitment on the trial close, there's no reason to move forward. Because when we talk about closing, so many times we think about the movie scene, right? Closing, like coffees for closers. Closing is not the last thing you said. Closing happens the entire time you're going through the sales process, and then you make an ask. This is where you make the ask, and this down here is where the actual negotiation's happening. So if we're in an hour and a half, let's say this whole thing is, let's say 90 minutes. You're going to spend 85 minutes here, and you're going to spend 5 minutes in the actual negotiation. So if you don't like being comfortable, you only need to become uncomfortable for a few minutes out of the entire presentation. But this is where you actually get paid, is down here. However, this is where you're closing. But if your presentation is primed for you to close, it's really not. This whole process is where you're closing. And just asking for them to sign the agreement at the end, I will say this from experience, is here's what our slides look like. So we get done with a 45-minute presentation, let's say, and the last slide literally just looks like this with a picture of a house. Easy, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much information. The next slide, I should say there, the question we ask is, based on everything you've heard from me, is there any reason you wouldn't want to work together moving forward? And if they say anything other than yes, the next slide is, here's what it looks like. And then we present, okay, cool, here's what it looks like to work together moving forward. Here's the agreement, here's the terms, here's the fee, here's the different ways that it can be paid. You have any questions? Sound good? And they say, nope, that sounds fantastic, and they sign. Cool, we'll DocuSign that over to you. Once you get it signed, then I will do the next thing. And this closes at like 50% on average for even new agents. And you, because you're watching this video, are not average. So I see the agents that just absolutely implement this and crush it, literally closing at 75%, to where we're actually being like, hey, I'd rather you close at 50% and make 25% more on every deal, which is more money. All right, so that was number 9. And this was handling all the objections, because you absolutely do not move forward otherwise. And they never call back. I guess that's the other thing I put in here as well too, is it's just not going to happen. They do not call back, or at least don't plan on them calling back, and put it that way. All right, number 10, one of my favorites of all time is crystal clear next steps. Crystal clear. That's the most important part. And I lied. Here's the most important part. That they agree to. Because if you think of it this way, is if you're leaving an appointment and you don't know what happens next, think about how your customer feels. They have absolutely no idea what's supposed to happen next. And if you don't very clearly explain to them what is going to happen next, they are totally going to be screwed in the process. And your follow-up, I promise, is going to fall off. So when you set crystal clear next steps, this is one of my favorite ways to have this sound. But I'm going to there's two different parts to this. So I'm going to give the tactical what to say. So if I don't hear from you, in X days, months, would it be okay? I'll write the whole thing out. To give you a call. I would highly recommend getting in the habit of asking this at the end of every single phone call and every single appointment. Okay, so if I don't hear from you in the next 7 days, would it be okay if I gave you a call? And if they say, well, we'll call you, that is an objection that you need to handle. And most salespeople miss that. If I don't hear from you in the next 7 days or so, would it be okay if I give you a call? And they say yes, like, cool. What day's best for you? It's Tuesday right now. Would it be like this same time would work for you? That's what I would recommend doing. Now, most people obviously don't do that. However, there's a huge lift on you will get ghosted less. You will get better callbacks. Your follow-ups will be easier because you're setting actual crystal clear next steps. So this is what you would actually say. Now, here's another pro tip, is if I said, so if I don't hear from you in the next 7 days, would it be okay if I gave you a call? And like, no, Christian, we're really not, if you were to tell me, we're not really in a hurry. Like, oh, okay. Sorry, I kind of misunderstood. I thought we were moving a little bit sooner, but if you're not moving anytime really soon, how about if I don't hear from you in the next month or two? Can I give you a call? And now you say yes. Cool. So instead of me being annoying to them and calling every single week and then wondering why they don't answer, I just call them a month later, like I promised, and now the expectation is there. Okay, cool. So if I don't hear from you in a month, we're in the beginning of whatever, I'll call you in a month from now. Sound good? Yes. And then once they confirm yes, that's the they agree to part. You're going to get a way higher compliance rate on your actual follow-up. Your follow-up will be way easier. That is number 2. I'm sorry, that's the first part. Now, the second thing that's on here is I like to explain it like this. So you have let me do a different color here. So you have this range and you have you have low over here and then you have high over here. So on the top you have value and then you have commitment. Right? So this is a range. On one side you have high value, high commitment. On the other side you have low value, low commitment. Now, your offer or your pitch to your consumer, I'm going to do it I'll just do 3 different colors. So for example, on our buy side, we have our buyer strategy session, which is very high value, very high commitment, right? This is a 45-minute plus consult. It's going to take a lot for them to actually say yes to that. They're going to need to be serious. They're going to need to be on Zoom. They're going to take it ready. And if they don't want to do that, we offer something that's medium value, medium commitment, which we call window shopping. This is where we set up our next tour, even if we don't have properties yet. Now, if they say no to all of these, then we go to our, let's just say, market update, kind of keep in touch plan. And this is low value, low commitment. And it's very simple. So there's 3 things that you offer. I think it's easy to do 2 or 3. No more than 3. I would not recommend just having one thing either. So those are the three different things. Now, the last thing that I want to mention here is what I call peeling back. So most people will just offer the lowest value thing because they're afraid of hearing no. Don't be afraid to hear no, but a lot of the times you're going to lose business because you're offering something that is low value. Right? Remember, just because it's easy for them to say yes to doesn't mean they're actually interested in it. So they might say, yeah, sure, you can send me a market update and call me in a month. But if that's not valuable to them, that's not going to help you actually convert the sale, unless that's what makes sense for them. So in our presentations, what this will look like is, let's say I am at a property tour with a buyer. I did a free touring agreement. I'm at the property tour with them. I have clarified why they're looking to make a move in the first place. I'm following closer framework. I've labeled their pain point and I've overviewed what they've done so far. Now I can move on to, based on everything what you've shared with me, and this is where we're tying a lot of things together. Based on what you've shared. Remember when I said tools in the belt, right? Remember I said tools. Remember, now I'm saying shared. Remember when I said you don't close in the front, you close, or you don't close at the end, you close at the front. This is all of what I'm talking about here, is I can say, okay, so based on everything you've shared with me so far, here's what I do for all my clients in your position, is this thing we call, and then make your pitch, right? And this is our exact pitch for, I'll pitch you just like I'm pitching a consumer for a buyer strategy session. So I've clarified why you're looking to move in the first place. I understand your timeline. When in a perfect world, when would you like to be moved into your new home? I've labeled your pain point. You've got 7 kids in a 2-bedroom and you're bursting at the seams and you need more bedrooms and some more space. And what you've done, so what have you done so far to make this move happen? You've done some research and this is your first open house you've run into. And you're looking to move in the next 90 days or so. I'd say, okay, cool. Well, here's what I do for all my clients who are in your position, is this thing we call a buyer strategy session. We cover 3 major things. We talk about what our clients are doing to take advantage of the market. We talk about how we keep you protected through the entire process. And we talk about how we get to the best deal possible, regardless of the circumstances. Would that be a bad idea to set up? And that is us pitching. That's our exact script for pitching our buyer strategy session. Now, this is a high commitment, right? This is high value. But if you don't want to set up a 45-minute consultation, maybe you're thinking, Christian, I don't feel like I'm quite ready for that. But I will then use the tools that I have in my belt. I would say, well, do you mind me? Earlier you shared with me that you need to be moved into your new home in 90 days. Why do you feel like you're not quite ready for this yet? And this is where you start looping all of these things in together. Remember, so far, we have covered, I guess I could scroll the way up. So far, we've covered a lot. And this is where like the rubber meets the road. Speed lead's a big one. The next thing here is maximizing your availability, right? So that is making their life easier. But then we talked about question-based selling. And I want to ask questions so that I can understand their why are they moving. And I explain why as their motivation and their timeline. And this is closer framework. And then I have childlike curiosity so that I can put tools in my belt. I'm going to ask all of these different things. I have a consultative sales approach, and we're going to walk them through a process that's going to lead them to where they want to be. I've added a tremendous amount of value up front, and a huge part of the way that we're doing that is this buyer strategy session, which now I want them to actually do. And I know it's valuable because all of our consumers say, thank you so much, this was so helpful. So when they say, I don't feel like I'm quite ready yet, I pull out the tools that are in my belt and I say, well, earlier you shared with me you need to be moved in 90 days. Why do you feel like you're not ready? And honestly, half of the time they're going to be like, yeah, I know. It sounds like it's a lot. It's really a big process. You're like, yeah, it is a big process. That's why we do this. So does it sound like a bad idea? And then you loop right back in. And if they don't say, yeah, sure, or they say maybe later, this is what I call, I'm going to get rid of this stuff. This is what I call peeling back. So I will say it just like this. And let me share a story of why I explain it this way. is if you were to go to the dentist and they tell you you've got 5 cavities, like you really need to get these cavities taken care of, and you panic and you're like, no, I'm not mentally prepared for that today. I hate the dentist. And the dentist was like, okay, cool. How about we just do a cleaning and then we can deal with it later. And you say, okay, cool. That's great. You get away with a win because you're not getting drilled, and you move on. And then you go back for a cleaning 6 months later, and then they don't mention your cavities again. And you start asking yourself, did I even have cavities? It must not have been that big of a deal if they're not bringing it up again. And because most real estate agents don't want to feel salesy, they end up not offering back the valuable thing because they don't want to explain it again. But going back to setting crystal clear next steps, here is what I call peeling back. So I would pitch the buyer strategy sessions. I'd say, based on everything you've shared with me so far, here's what I do for all my clients in your position is this thing we call buyer strategy session, bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Does that sound like a bad idea? And if they're like, I'm Christian, I'm not quite ready, I say, well, objection handle and on. Now, once I get to the peeling back portion, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to set expectations. Okay. So since you're not ready to do this now, that's totally fine. I understand. This is important, so I will bring it up again in the future. But how about we do this instead? And that is peeling back. How about we do this instead? It's what I call window shopping, which is where we do this and that. Would that be a bad idea? And they'll say yes to this, right? And this is where you get the yes. Because you peeled back from the highest value, highest commitment to the middle value, middle commitment option, which was easier for them to say yes to. And you set the expectation that we are going to talk about the buyer strategy session again in the future. Same thing with listing presentation. It's interchangeable. It's the same thing. And if they say no to that, they also don't want to go window shopping, which is like, let's go set up a tour for more properties. Then you can also peel back. Again, this is why I like to have 3, to a very low value, very low commitment. Whereas, all right, so how about we just do this instead? I'll send you a monthly market update so you can stay updated with what's going on in the market. And then if I don't hear from you in a month or so, would it be okay if I gave you a call? And if they say no to that, it's because they hate you. And you're not converting that lead, you're not closing them. Can you keep them in your database and nurture them forever? Sure, you absolutely can. Is that somebody that's going to hire you tomorrow? Absolutely not. So this here is going to help you raise your conversion ratio dramatically for 2 major reasons. You are going to be your conversion, which is CVR stands for conversion, rate will go up. Your time with wasted people is going to go down. Because if they do not agree to your crystal clear next steps, you know that person's not a deal. We are no longer just floating around with people, hoping to God that they actually do a deal and do it with you. And all of this leads to you being a happy salesperson. All right, so that was number 10. Now let's move on to number 11, which is pulling appointments forward. What does that mean? So if you had a calendar and you've got all of these different days, there should probably be 7, right? If you have day 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and you had the whole entire month out, and they could just book whenever they wanted. And this person, like if today was here and this person books out here, I could pretty much guarantee you with a 99% chance certainty that they're not showing up for this appointment 3 weeks later. There's just no chance. So the window that works the best is like a 2 to 3 day window. So if you, even 4 days out, like if you're booking somebody, if today was Tuesday and I'm booking an appointment for Tuesdays, this is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If I'm booking an appointment for Friday, this is like as far out as I would recommend. If I'm booking an appointment for next Wednesday, way too long. So if somebody does, and that's the time that makes the most sense for them, sure, book the appointment on Friday. But I want you to call them in between here, and I want you to try to pull the appointment forward. So what that sounds like is you call text the person and get them on a conversation, right? And you're going to say, hey, I know we have an appointment for Friday, but I actually had an opening that came up for this afternoon. Would you be available? And if they say yes, great, do the appointment. Now, sometimes with property tours, it doesn't work. This is way more for consultations. So if somebody says, hey, I'm going out of town this weekend, call me, or let's set an appointment up for the following week. And I would do everything in my power to get the appointment before they actually went on vacation. And if there's any shadow of a doubt that they're not going to do that, that's okay. But you want to try to pull the appointments forward. And the sweet spot here is 1 to 3 days. Same day, next day. These are the major ones, because after that, there's a huge drop off on their show up rate. And if somebody's booking that far in advance, it's probably subconsciously that they actually just don't want to do it. So I know for me, I'm way more likely to cancel something that was on the calendar for a week. I'm like, I don't even remember why I booked this thing. And it's just human nature. If you book a reservation 30 days out to a restaurant, and unless that's like a big deal, like if you're just going to a regular restaurant that you would go to all the time, and you book it 30 days in advance, you're way more likely to cancel that rather than the appointment you book for tonight. 100%. It's the same thing with this. Now, this is one of my favorites, and I left it for number 12 because I only wanted to share it with the people that actually watch the video. So if you are watching this video to this point, I know this is a very long one, and there's a lot of information in here. If you could like the video, subscribe to the channel, it means a ton for me. I put a lot of work into these videos, and I want to make more stuff that you like, and I hope this helps you make more money. So number 12 is something I learned this last year, and this is called a video sales letter, or this is also known as a VSL. Now, I did this early in my career without really knowing what I was doing. Now I do this on purpose, and it works way better. But basically, think of your video sales letter as like you got an email or you have a web page, and let's just say it's an email, right? So you've got your subject, and you've got the body, blah, blah, blah. And in here, you're going to have a video with a play button. Now, and then you have a text here as well. So I would do this by accident early in my career. And basically what I was doing is I was explaining what was going to happen at every step of the way. So when I got a new lead and I was reaching out to them, my video was that I was sending them, and yes, I was call text emailing, of course, but the email was, hey, we just got connected by whatever, or it was nice meeting you at the open house. Like whatever the source was, I would tie into this. So I would make it make sense on a new lead and say, hey, here's kind of how we do business. Here's what I do for my clients in your position, is from lead to conversation. It's like, I just want to kind of understand where you're at so that I can point you in the right direction. Whether you're moving in 2 days or in 2 years doesn't really matter. I just want to help you take the next step. So go ahead and respond to this video or take whatever the next step is. So that'd be like the step from lead to conversation. From conversation to appointment, it'd be like, hey, I'm really looking forward to meeting you tomorrow at 123 Main Street. Here's a little bit more information on it, whatever. And I did a lot of like one-to-one emails. And then over time, I made them more generic. And in this video, this is where you're doing really high value. And the goal, other than to build know, like, and trust, which I don't want to say goes without saying, the goal here is to handle future objections. That's really the goal. I want to handle all of the future objections so that there's nothing left on the table when they come up. Now, not everybody's going to watch this, which obviously I totally understand. But like if 25% of the leads that you get watch the video, that's huge. That makes 25% of the leads you work with at the next step easier to convert. It means more money. Like at the end of the day, I've never seen 3 things. That just literally means more money. And you're going to get more tactical with this over time. And there's frameworks, and I have the framework in this in the schools, in the free community. There is a marketing masterclass that will be coming absolutely. In the video sales letter, I'll have a whole section in there. But I won't spend a ton of time here, but I highly recommend you do this at each individual step and start by making them one-to-one so that you get better at talking to the camera. I would recommend from a vendor or like the software. I can't delete this. You could either use BombBomb, which is what we use consumer facing, or you could use Loom. I don't think it really matters either way. BombBomb's probably a little bit better for consumer facing. All right, last but not least, number 13 is to have a beautiful presentation. Sounds incredibly stupid, but our buyer strategy session, our listing presentation are totally choreographed down to the exact words you should say it almost the entire time. And that is based on hundreds of variations. Now, I'm not going to go through the entire strategy session. That would be insane. However, this is in our sales masterclass. So if you want to go check this out, here's a direct call to action for you. If you want to check this whole thing out, is go to onyxhomes.com/school. The training's totally free. The sales masterclass is 100% free. Go check it out. There's tons of information in there. You literally get our entire slide deck. You can copy it. You can use it. You can use our slide deck if you want with your customers, for all I care. If you're in California, it'll make a lot of sense. If you're not in California, use that to make your own. Here's how you really want to make sure you are making your presentation. You want to show proof. You want to show, not tell. You want to show proof that you know what you're doing. You want to share your proven process. You want to handle all objections in the presentation. The reason we do this is because when you get to the close, you are not closing on the last, so do you want to sign up and work with me? Like, there's no closing line like they have in the movies. Coffee's not for closers. The sales process that you build for you and your sales organization, or just you, this is where you're closing with 95% of the time. You are closing with a process. You're not closing with a fancy line you have at the end of the day. Now, yeah, you might have your one-liner at the end, right? But honestly, for us, it's so much easier to just follow a process that closes. So you want to share your proven process. So this would be A is show, don't tell. Show proof. Show a map of the sales. Show how much money you've saved. Show how many deals you've done. Don't just tell them you're great. Don't, God forbid, do not tell them you're number one because your brokerage said so. Share your proven process. And if you don't have one, you need to document. Something you do works, I hope, and you just want to share it. C is you want to handle all of the objections you hear inside of the presentation. So if you get to the end of your agreement or at the end of your presentation and then you hear objections, you should be able to go back and put these in the presentation for the next time. So if you have a list, like I would recommend if you're going through creating yours, or just use ours, is write down all the objections that you get and see if you can put the answer to that objection, if you can handle that objection inside of the presentation. It's going to be way better. For example, on a buyer strategy session, one of the major objections most agents get is, why shouldn't I work with a listing agent? Question, would you rather handle that objection in the first 10 minutes of the presentation or after you've asked them to sign the agreement? Of course, you'd rather handle it ahead of time. So in our buyer strategy session, we literally spend 3 slides explaining why it's stupid to work with the listing agent on both sides of the transaction. We have stories and we have there's a lot of different proof as far as why that might not be a great idea. And guess what? We stopped getting that objection because we handled it earlier. And that is how you close way earlier in the process. Now, I have a bonus for you. This might be fun. Just close the deal. They are not going to call you back. They are absolutely not going to do what they say they're going to do. They're not going to think about it and call you back tomorrow. Now, of course, some people do. But number 14, the bonus here, that's 11. The bonus here is close the deal. I got the best advice, and before I was in the real estate business, I was in the dealership business. And early in my career, I got really good advice from one of the sales managers. And I was brand new, And at it, you might know this if you've been to a dealership, where whoever you meet as a salesperson is likely the best salesperson at the entire dealership. So that person will work with you for like half of the time you're there, look at some of your basic like wants and needs and all that. And then they will transition over to the best salesperson will then come out. And this is in turn in the industry. But what happens is you give the best salesperson at the dealership more opportunities. And this is not really relevant in the real estate space. However, what is relevant is I asked why they do that, because I had a customer leave one day and the manager said, "Hey, why didn't you get a whoever involved?" And I was like, "Oh, they're gonna go think about it and let us know." It's like, no, they're not. And he sat me down, he talked to me, and he said, "Hey, here's what's gonna happen: do you think Anthony, let's just say is his name. Do you think Anthony's a better salesperson than you?" I'm like, "Yeah, this guy's amazing. He's amazing. Like, he's so good." He's like, "Okay. So Anthony's probably had a better chance to close them than you did, right?" "Yeah, of course he did." And like, take the ego out of it. And he said, "Okay, so they're going to go drive 2 minutes down the road to the next dealership, and they're going to talk to their Anthony, their best salesperson. And then if that guy doesn't close the deal, they're going to drive to the next dealership, and they're going to get that dealership's best salesperson. And if that guy doesn't close it, then they're going to go to the next dealership and get that guy's best salesperson." And the lesson was, what is the likelihood that you're better than all of those other salespeople, that you're going to win the business? And it just stuck with me. And I, always wanted to be the guy that won the business. I wanted to be the best of all of those guys. But it's very true in the real estate business. You just aren't really turning it to somebody that knows what they're doing better than you do. And if you're on a team, maybe you do, mentors and all that fun stuff. But in general, that isn't the case. So when I say close the deal, it's when you have the opportunity to close the deal, you close it. You handle the objections. You add tremendous amounts of value up front so that it's a no-brainer for them to say yes to you. And at the end, you might have some objections, but in my experience, if you implement these types of golden BBs into your business, your close rates are going to go up through the roof without you ever having to learn any hard selling tactics or any of that stuff that honestly everybody hates, I hate, and I don't train on. I don't use any of that stuff. So if you found this valuable, like and subscribe. This next video that I made is the kind of blueprint to go from $100,000 in a year in your real estate business to $500,000 plus. This is exactly what I did to scale from 3 deals in my first 5 months to $1.1 million in GCI over the next 2 years. So if you want to check that out, go for it. If you want Sales Masterclass, go to onyxhomes.com/school. I'll see you in the next one.